Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Let's get into it here. First of all, as I'm recording this, it's of course been said that more JFK files will be released. Donald Trump said that here just the other day. And again, 80,000 plus pages allegedly. I have the website. I will link it in the description below where apparently these are going to be released. It's the JFK Archives website, essentially. There's some interesting documents already that exist there. Some of the documents are fraudulent from foreign countries. Again, it's a plethora of information, but either way, I would recommend that people, again, start to download maybe some of these PDFs, and then once you download the PDF, in the upper right-hand corner or wherever it exists on your PDF platform, that in the search box, when you can search particular words that exist within these documents, look up the word Israel, look up the term Mossad, and see how many times they pop up within these documents. So that's one of the ways, again, that you can kind of do a quick search of certain elements, I think, that a person might be interested in regarding those documents, certainly from a keyword standpoint, but that would be my 2 cents on the whole thing. Again, we really don't need the documents to know the truth. We already know what it is. We know that it's our own government. It's, of course, past individuals in our government, including Lyndon Johnson and endless other individuals who were involved, but it was also, of course, 3-letter agencies and foreign agencies, including Israel, Mossad, and endless other people. So it's all a sad state of affairs, but it's been theorized, again, that it was around that time when the underground so-called Q movement, or the retaking of our country, actually transpired. That, again, behind the scenes, there were endless individuals who knew that our government was, in fact, responsible, along with foreign governments, and it was at that moment when those individuals were well aware of who the enemies within were, of course, many of them being of the Jewish persuasion. And then at the exact same time, the mob ties as well, the Italian mob, which of course is also Jewish. But even so, it was then when individuals who work for the government and the military started to work behind the scenes and start to piece things together and put things together. Again, hopefully in an effort to wake up the American public as to what was really going on within their own country. Again, I don't think that the vast majority of Americans actually believe that Lee Harvey Oswald pulled a trigger that day. It's pretty evident he didn't. Pretty evident he had nothing to do with it. Again, he may have known that there were people who wanted Kennedy dead, but at the exact same time, he certainly was not directly involved in the sense that he was going to be a gunman of any kind. Now, with all of that said, here's where I want to begin. I want to talk about gradual disillusionment. And another way of putting that is just simply red pilling. You're waking people up to what actually goes on and encouraging individuals to think. And at the same time, numerous things are being said out loud in the public, even by Donald Trump himself, where people should be asking questions. You've heard me bring this up before, that in many cases he'll say something and then the media around him doesn't even ask a follow-up question. And I want to start off specifically with playing some audio here from him just the other day when he was at the Kennedy Center. He, of course, is the president of the board of the Kennedy Center, or at the very least, Richard Grenell is. But Donald Trump certainly sits on the board. They've kicked out a great deal of the whack jobs who were there. They were laundering copious amounts of money. The building was in disrepair, according to Donald Trump. And then he drops a very important piece of information. And for those of us, again, who fully understand what's going on in the world, specifically regarding child trafficking, this comment sticks out like a sore thumb. I heard him say this, and I immediately thought, you've got to be kidding me. Not that I was surprised that it was happening, but that people were not asking questions about what that was and what that meant and what he said. And he says it at least 2 or 3 times. So I'm going to play this piece of audio here again. It looks like he's sort of in a basement or in a garage of some kind inside the Kennedy Center. Richard Grenell is standing behind him and to his right. And Donald Trump says the following here. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much. We're here to have our first board meeting at Kennedy Center, and it's in tremendous disrepair. as is a lot of the rest of our country, most of it because of bad management. This is a shame what I've watched and witnessed. They spent a fortune, $250 million, and they built these rooms that nobody's going to use, rooms underground. And I've often wondered, what are the big cubes that they have outside that block the view? They're cubes with a door in them so that people can get down to rooms that nobody's going to use. And it's a shame. It's a shame. The other thing is, we're going to have a little problem with some people that work here. We had Lee Greenwood wanted to sing a little song today, and because of the cost and the union structure, for him to sing a song just for the board, just a board meeting, it was going to cost $30,000. That doesn't sound too good. They wanted $30,000 to move a piano, so you can't have that. So we're gonna fix it up. But it's really emblematic of our country. At the Kennedy Center, you look at the columns outside, you look at, they're supposed to be covered by something, whether it's marble or whatever, granite. They were never covered, they were painted. But bringing it to more modern times, a lot of money's been given to it, and the money has not been properly spent. They built rooms underground with no windows, no nothing, that will not be used ever. You're not going to have people use them. It's such a waste of money, such a terrible waste, but we'll bring it back, we'll make it great again. But it is so much like what I'm witnessing in other places. We have open borders, we have men playing in women's sports. It's all the same thing, it's all the same mentality and thinking. So I'm very disappointed when I look around. The bottom line, it has tremendous potential, and we'll work with Congress. As you know, it's a very public facility, and we'll do what has to be done. We'll be having a meeting with the Speaker in the not too distant future. I think it's important to save this structure in this building.
Those comments were lost on many people on social media, and a great deal of people, again, on certain chat boards didn't even bring it up. I don't think that can get more obvious as to what he's talking about. Now, let me go back in time real quick and refresh some people's memories on something, because I think I brought this up on the show because it was happening during this time. When Joe Biden was pretending to be president and was in office, there was a citizen journalist, his name has slipped my mind, so my apologies. I can hear his voice in my head, but he's a white guy. And he, again, was living in the D.C. area, but he would always go around D.C. with his cell phone, and he would film particular things. He would film, again, the giant gates that were up in front of Congress and in front of Capitol Hill, and, a number of other things. He would take some footage of the White House, certainly at nighttime, occasionally. He would take footage of military aircraft flying in and out of D.C. It was a number of other things, and other, again, construction projects that were taking place. There was one particular project that was taking place, and it was a giant excavation project where they're going around D.C. and they are digging up the ground, and it's exposing all of these underground tunnels. Again, this isn't made up. This footage does exist. You could probably get on BitChute or Rumble and certainly find it. But when Donald Trump mentioned that there are these cubes that are outside of the Kennedy Center, I know exactly what he's talking about, and I've never even been there. They are these small white structures. I want to say maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, tops. And then they just have a little roof over top of them, and then a door. And again, there's no windows. It's just like a wooden or a metal door. And then it leads down to an underground tunnel, essentially. That's exactly what he was referencing. And he was openly stating that they spent $250 million, and were misappropriating that money. But then again, out of nowhere, he mentions these underground rooms that have no windows that nobody is going to use. Again, it's creepy as shit. Why would you have underground rooms with no windows, with a tunnel system that nobody is going to use? It's clearly for child trafficking, for human sacrifice, child rape, whatever it is. I don't think it can get more obvious. It's not for stacking books. It's not for holding artwork or a number of other things. It's for moving children. It has to be the case. So again, years ago, when Biden was pretending again to be president, a lot of those tunnels were being destroyed. They were being completely opened up by earth movers, and then they were being filled in. And then again, a lot of those structures were just being completely demolished, which was great and is great. Very famously, of course, one of those structures exists, I believe, just outside of the White House, or outside one of the wings of the White House, and then it moves over to the Treasury. You can actually see this particular door also. It was in a movie, if I'm not mistaken, that was Murder at 1600. I think it even starred Dennis Miller and Diane Lane. Wesley Snipes might have been in the movie. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think he was. Anyway, they used one of those particular doors. And then they used it again in order to move from point A to point B. And that was that. But again, that's one of the things that he's referencing there. And it's kind of out of place. Because again, he's being asked about the Kennedy Center and their board and what they're doing, not to mention the piano and Lee Greenwood singing. I mean, that seemed out of place also. But this right here is really one of the larger bones that I have to pick with the so-called awake individuals on the right. Certainly those that have massive audiences and copious amounts of followers. These people are incapable of engaging in gradual disillusionment. There are certain things that they have become, again, gradually disillusioned about. There's no doubt about it. Again, I think of Stu Peters, I think of Alex Jones, of course. A number of these individuals have had a lot of things right over the years, and you've seen, again, their ability to learn. Alex Jones, of course, very famously thinks he's got most of it, if not all of it, already figured out. And then he blows off the entire Q operation. Blows it off as being a complete bullshit psyop to make people lazy. The exact opposite is true, and there's more than enough evidence out there to prove that. Again, Stu Peters does the exact same thing. He blows off that operation because, again, instead of admitting that he didn't pay attention to it as it was happening, it's easier for him from a cognitive standpoint to just blow it off and just say, trust the plan, whatever. That's not what it meant. And that's not what was happening back then. It was, again, as I've been over numerous times, it was galvanizing people, it was motivating people, it was getting people out of their homes to pay attention to the world that they live in and recognize how horrible it is. And that, yes, child trafficking is arguably one of the worst things that's taking place around the entire world, certainly within our own government, within our own capital, on a constant basis. More than enough evidence to prove that. So again, the business of waking up is not singular in that you only wake up regarding a few subjects. You have to take in copious amounts of information, and you have to take in numerous angles of evidence and sift through all of it and start to connect dots and say, yeah, this is probably what this means. Again, we can assume that under liberal control and certainly under the control of the right, in the past, the Kennedy Center, along with, of course, other institutions there in Washington, D.C., if not all of them, and let's face it, it's probably all of them, were child trafficking. There's no doubt about it. Let me give you another example of some of this evidence where, again, this can't be accidental. And again, Donald Trump's truth posts, and certainly again back when he was president the first time regarding his use on Twitter, his posts are controlled. There are messages within his posts, and this is not imaginary. There's endless evidence that proves this. There have been endless social media posts that have proven this. There have been endless shows, documentaries that have proven this. But you've heard me in the past bring up again his reference to April 2nd, and that April 2nd is going to be a big day for this country. That April 2nd, again, he wants to do what he wants to do on April 1st, but he's superstitious and all this other stuff. He puts out this post the other day, again on St. Patrick's Day, Monday, and he says the following: April 2nd is Liberation Day for America, because we will start taking back some of the vast wealth that has been taken from us due to the many weak, incompetent, and perhaps even dishonest politicians who have represented us in the past." Unquote. Rather interesting, rather direct. Again, people typically won't ask him about that, and the media is not asking him about that. My problem not only lies with, of course, the media not asking follow-up questions, and it's even been theorized that, again, maybe the media is in on it to not ask questions. That they've been told, if Donald Trump says something that seems out of place, then don't follow up with a question. Don't ask him any further questions. Don't ask him about these rooms in the basement underground at the Kennedy Center. That when he says something like that, don't ask any questions. Why would someone, again, based on that alone, not ask a follow-up question? Why would somebody not ask him this also, about April 2nd being Liberation Day, which is capitalized? It seems rather interesting. Again, you get on the cue boards and you type in April 2nd as a date and you start reading the posts from April 2nd that took place during those years. It's some interesting posts that are being made about some interesting subjects. So there's a ton going on here. You can't say this isn't a military operation. There's too much movement. There's too much communication taking place. There's very suspicious things being said on a constant basis. Again, regarding that particular post of Trump at the Kennedy Center and making those comments, this is where the gradual disillusionment and the cognitive scaffolding take place with trying to wake people up, certainly on X. You just have to know where to look. Because X is an interesting platform from the standpoint of individuals being paid to not say particular things. And then you have, of course, individuals being paid to say particular things. And then you have disinformation campaigns taking place all of the time. Copious amounts of blackpilling going on. We're a doomed country. We're 100% occupied by Jews. Yeah, I mean, we get that. But we're not doomed. Because again, as I've said before, if we're doomed and everything is hopeless, then you should just kill yourself because eventually you're never going to get what you want. So why even bother? Again, I'm not suggesting anybody really do that, but ultimately, I mean, that's the end game for a lot of these blackpillers. They blackpill all the time. That when they do that, they're showing their inability to take in evidence. This is, again, why they would never be a detective, because they would never get hired anywhere, because, of course, they wouldn't be doing their job. They would just say, well, they got away. What am I supposed to do about it? I can't do anything about it. And then they would just quit. So, again, you have to take in copious amounts of evidence, and you have to see things that are happening in front of your face that have never actually happened before. And one of those, and I hate the word, but it's true, it's really just the truth, but it's quote-unquote transparency. And there has been more of it under this administration than any administration previously. Let me give you just one of many examples. On X, anybody who has a gray check mark is usually somebody who is working for government and working for the White House or, again, in another government position. And there are many accounts that have this gray check mark right next to it. One of these particular pages, which I recommend people follow if you're on X, is called Rapid Response 47. Again, they posted the Kennedy audio that you just heard there regarding the video, which again was on C-SPAN and was aired on C-SPAN. And let me read you some of these comments, because there's some interesting comments having to do with that particular post. This one individual claims that they are from Alaska, a Ruth Jones. At not that Mrs. Jones is their handle. They said the following: Alaska's investments are done through David Rubenstein's Carlyle Group. His daughter manages our permanent dividend fund, and his wife used to hang out with Maxwell at all of the native villages. Again, if you're familiar with Alaska and you're familiar with the child trafficking that's been going on there for a very long time, not to mention, of course, this post about the Kennedy Center and underground rooms with no windows, etc., and Maxwell, of course, this is all child trafficking. Again, you go down to some of these posts, and some of them are just focusing on the wasteful spending, and that's as far as their thinking goes. The wasteful spending is the least of the problems here. It's a problem, but of course, where's the money been going and what's it been going to funding? Again, another person says, seems like when Democrats are in control of something, it turns into disrepair. Example, Kennedy Center, border, Department of Ed, transportation, etc. It goes on. And it says again, the same Ruth Jones said, Dave Rubenstein ran the Kennedy Center. He also runs the state of Alaska. So if that answers any of your questions for you, ... It's like, yeah. Again, a lot of these people know exactly what was going on at the Kennedy Center. They know that this is child trafficking. Some people, again, like I said, are only focused on the money aspect, but it's way worse than that. Again, another person here said WTF was going on in those underground rooms with no windows. Another person said rooms underground, big eyes emoji, no windows, big eyes emoji. Yeah. Again, people know. People know what this is all about. They're hearing the messages, and it's stirring their instincts. But this is the problem with the blackpilling crowd, is they don't even hear it. And these are individuals who claim to be, again, conservative, constitutionalist Americans who want the truth. But when the truth is being told to them, or a clue or a hint is being given to them, they don't even hear it, and they don't even respond. They don't even bring it up on their own shows, and they don't ask follow-up questions. They make bad detectives. They're still wrapped up in the illusion. As much as they claim that they're awake on endless issues, they just aren't. They're ignoring what they haven't even considered. And yet, it's that habit right there that gets people stuck, and it gets them, again, in the position that we've all been in before, where you might hear something repetitively and then you just blindly believe it instead of looking into it for yourself. Because it's the looking into it yourself and connecting those dots that leads to gradual disillusionment. This is what leads to cognitive scaffolding, but you have to break down your belief system first before you can build a stronger structure around your previous belief system and ultimately get rid of it. But again, you can't ignore evidence. These are things that, again, cannot be ignored. Again, unfortunately, for the blackpilling crowd, they also have a very interesting habit of only focusing in on one wavelength of thought and one, avenue of thinking. For example, there's this. There's a great deal of people, Whitney Webb is one of them, there are many other individuals as well, where of course they're always talking about the technocratic state and technocracy and technology ruling our lives and 1,000 other things. Those individuals use technology on a constant basis. So again, them mentioning technocracy all of the time is a bit hypocritical from the standpoint of them using many of these very similar tools that they, of course, are also criticizing. And that all of that is also gradual as well. Well, the more technology you have around you, the more likely you are to accept it as a convenience. In this next clip here with Ted Cruz, another guy, I don't know if he's a Texas politician or who he is, and Elon Musk. And these three guys are sitting down and they're having a conversation. And of course, the great deal, it's Ted Cruz's podcast, but a great deal of the conversation, of course, hinges itself around fraud and Doge and wasteful spending and a number of other things. But then Ted Cruz leans back in his chair, and I'm not a fan of his by any stretch. He's a loser Zionist, among other things. But either way, he leans back in his chair, and he asks the question about artificial intelligence, and he asks Elon, so where do you see this in the future? Again, it's his answer that he provides, which is frightening. But at the exact same time, it's his answer that only the individuals that criticize the technocratic state would basically hone in on. They wouldn't focus on any of the good things that are happening. They would just say, well, see, he's telling you exactly what he wants to do. Here's the interesting part. I can take in this amount of information and this amount of evidence and make logical conclusions that, yeah, what he's suggesting is a bad idea. But I'm going to give you my 2 cents on his comments after I play the audio. This runs for almost 5 minutes. I want you to hear the entire exchange because, again, it's rather odd. And the politician's response is rather odd too. Because, again, I don't like the technocratic state any more than anybody else does. I don't like robots replacing human beings for doing a job that a human being can do. But at the exact same time, search engines are also artificial intelligence, and they always have been. Again, back in the 1990s, if you ever used the internet, or certainly the early 2000s, whether, again, it was Yahoo or Google or what have you, if you're typing in a question into a search box, you're going to get an answer. Well, that's artificial intelligence. It's an algorithm. It's gathering numerous information from numerous points of reference, and then it's providing you an answer. Or at the very least, it's providing you a list of possible answers. And then you dive in and you start to sift through the information and you try to arrive at what the actual singular answer is. What artificial intelligence has done is, again, for good or bad, and there's a lot of bad with it, is it's taken a number of different angles and it's basically all honed it into one particular answer, or I would say a more refined answer, as opposed to, again, focusing on 20 separate articles that talk about a particular issue. It's cherry picking particular points that are being made in all 20 some articles and then giving you an answer. It's not that it's really the answer, because usually it's not. And you can immediately find out the bias within AI systems, and we already have. So when Elon Musk says things like, well, artificial intelligence is more advanced than the human mind, not when it comes to knowing what the truth is. That's up to us. That's up to the human mind. Because again, the computer is making decisions based on what the human being is programming the computer to dish out to people. And the easiest way that you figure this out, of course, is you read a book like Mein Kampf, written by Adolf Hitler, and then, of course, you start to ask an AI system about Adolf Hitler, and the two don't make sense. The two don't match up. They immediately, again, head off in different directions. They'll tell you he was the worst human being on the face of the planet, and 1,000 other biased takes, when clearly that's not the case. So again, that's just one of many examples. Again, you ask it if space travel is real, and can we do that in the future? They would say yes. The answer is no. I mean, the Grok system, the Grok AI system would lead you to believe that the answer is yes. Clearly, it's not, clearly that's not the case. Again, I mentioned the fake astronauts in the last episode. That's clearly fake. It can't get more fake. But Elon Musk is lying to people by saying, oh, yes, we're doing this and we're saving them and we're helping them from the International Space Station and blah, blah, blah. No one with a brain believes this. But if you ask an AI system, the AI system would tell you it's real. So this is why AI systems are not going to be smarter than human beings ever. They just won't. AI systems can do some things well, but it doesn't do everything well. It can narrow a search for you, which is basically all that a search engine could really do. This is just a more advanced search engine. But when he starts talking about robots, this is where it gets just stupid. Humanized robots where you can take pieces and parts off of them and replace them, that's just retarded. And again, I have a take on it after you hear this audio. But listen to this exchange between the three of them. Again, it's Elon Musk, Ted Cruz, and some other guy. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
AI. In 10 years, how is life going to be different because of AI for just a normal person?
Well, 10 years is a long time. In 10 years, probably AI could do anything better than a human can, cognitively. Probably almost, I think in 10 years, based on the current rate of improvement, AI will be smarter than the smartest human. Yeah. There will also be a massive number of robots. So humanoid robots.
By the way, I got to ask, how come your robots look so much like the creepy robots for my robot? Was that intentional or just... I
was hoping he was going to say, yeah, just to mess with you. It's not meant to look like any prior robot. We'll iterate the design. You'll be able to have... A lot of the robot parts are cosmetic. You'll be able to switch out the kind of snap-on cosmetic parts of the robot, make it look like something else if you'd like. Mm-hmm. So there'll be ultimately billions of humanoid robots. All cars will be self-driving.
In 10 years?
In 10 years, probably 90% of miles driven will be autonomous.
Huh. Wow, that fast.
Yeah. In 5 years, probably 50% of all miles driven will be autonomous.
Now, if AI will be smarter than any person, how many jobs go away because of that? And what do people do if you've got millions of people that are losing their jobs? Like that, a lot of people are understandably freaked out about that.
Well, goods and services will become as close to free. So it's not as though people will be wanting in terms of goods and services.
So why is that? Why are goods and services free in an AI world or close to free?
Well, you have, I don't know, tens of billions of robots. That they will make you anything or provide any service you want for basically next to nothing. It's not that people will have a lower standard of living; they'll have actually a much higher standard of living. The challenge will be fulfillment. How do you derive fulfillment and meaning in life?
Is Skynet real? Like you get the apocalyptic visions of AI. How real is the prospect of killer robots annihilating humanity?
20% likely, maybe 10%.
On what time frame?
5 to 10 years.
So soon, like you see a world where that's possible.
Yeah, but I mean, you could look at it like the glass is 80, 90% full, meaning like 80% likely will have extreme prosperity for all.
Now, I guess my view, we're in a race to win AI. We're in a race with China. And my view is if they're going to be killer robots, I'd rather they be American killer robots than Chinese. How likely are we winning right now? Is America winning right now? And how likely is America to win the race for AI vis-a-vis China or anyone else?
For the next few years, I think America is likely to win. Then it will be a function of who controls the AI chip fabrication. The factories that make the AI chips, who controls them? If more of them are controlled by China, then China will win.
More of the factories that are making the AI chips. You think that will determine it?
Yes.
And how are we doing versus China on that front?
Well, right now, almost all the advanced AI chip factories, they call them fabs, are in Taiwan.
And what if China invades Taiwan?
69 miles away from you.
Yeah. What happens if China? If China invades Taiwan, what happens to the world?
Well, if they were to invade in the near term, the world would be cut off from advanced AI chips. And currently, 100% of advanced AI chips are made in Taiwan.
How fast can we put that online in America, and how important is that for national security?
I think it's essential for national security, and we're not doing enough.
Elon Musk has an interesting autistic tick, I think. And I think he is autistic. I think the dude is on the spectrum without a doubt. I've taught autistic students, and one of the things that they always did is they would always talk in certainties about an interest of theirs. It wasn't that their interest was factual, and in many cases it was science fiction, but they would talk about it as if it was actually real. And they would talk again in full-blown certainties. Well, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. There's no way for him to actually know that unless he's asking one of his own computerized systems a particular question and having a conversation with it back and forth that is a conversation that is stimulating to him. Let me break this down another way. First of all, I'm not concerned with AI in the slightest. I actually trust human beings and their instincts far more than a robot. Right now, politically speaking, you have the left that hates Elon Musk, and you have people on the right who don't trust him. You have people who also, again, are a part of this sort of groupie club where they're like, oh, Elon's the greatest, Elon's the best. Basically, you have the vast majority of America not like him, for one reason or another. This tends to be the reason I don't like him. because of the things that he says right there. What's to like? I mean, there's nothing there to actually like when he brings up subjects like this. Some people are like, oh, wow, that's fascinating, like these two guys. But at the same time, he's not saying anything that's actually inviting or pleasurable in any way. So let me use, again, this is just a very quick example. And this is something that even Luther Smith brought up on the show a while back when we were talking. He openly, again, brought up the business of application use and fast food restaurants and how quickly human beings are willing to adapt to, again, technology tools in a particular wavelength of thought or a particular service that they would normally get from human beings. So let me use, again, a McDonald's drive-thru as an example. Number one, of all of the people in America, do you think that the vast majority of individuals use McDonald's, let alone fast food drive-thrus? Again, I really don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what that percentage breakdown is. But the more that something like that, and again, we know that most of it is poison food without a doubt. That's why it's as convenient as it is. It's not because it's healthy, it's because it's terrible. But at the same time, when an avenue like that in a business like that starts to add new technology, in particular in place of a human being, it becomes not more convenient, it becomes more cumbersome. So every single time that you now go through a McDonald's or any other place, almost always there will be a computerized voice that will sound, again, either like a female or a male, but it is different from the actual human that is at the drive-through lane where you actually pay. And they ask you, are you paying with the application today? That's their first question. And again, many, many, many years ago, that never used to be the first question. Normally, you would just drive up and they would say, welcome to McDonald's, what can I get you? What would you like to have? Or whatever. And you would just tell them. And then you'd say, well, that's it. And then they go, okay, here's your total. And they would just tell you your total. And then you would drive around, you'd get your food, and you'd leave. Now what happens, and what's happened over the course of many years now, is they will not only ask you if you're going to pay with your phone application, or if you've ordered through your phone application, where of course you wave your phone in front of the screen and all this other crap. Again, it's sold to people as being a convenience, but it isn't. It's just one more thing for you to do that you don't want to do by and large. The only time that people do it is because they're either completely brainwashed or they think it's cool. But the vast majority of people don't. So before the applications to pay for food came around, one of the things that they would do at the drive-thrus is, you may recall, they would openly ask you if you want a particular meal, or do you want a particular deal that they have that day, even though you're driving up and you already know what you want. What they're trying to do is, it's all social manipulation and social engineering. They're trying to see if you will completely change your mind based on them making a subliminal or direct suggestion that you buy something else, when it wasn't even on your mind to begin with. You drive up and you want a spicy chicken sandwich at a Wendy's, but instead they look at you and they say, hi, would you like to try the so-and-so and so-and-so today? And your first answer is usually no. Because you're already there to get a specified thing that you've already made a decision on what you want. So they're testing you. But they're not just testing people either. What they're doing is they're calculating that particular answer and that response as a company. Not just as an individualized building, but as an entire company. And then they go back to the drawing board and they say, okay, how many people out of 100 completely changed their mind or said something over the microphone like, wow, you know what? I wasn't going to get that particular meal deal, but I will now. Thanks for suggesting it. And then you end up doing it. Out of 100 people, how many people do you think actually do that? I would venture to guess it's next to zero. Same thing with the application payment system. I would venture to guess that the people that use it is next to zero. People are voting with their feet, and they're voting no on more technology on a constant basis. Now use the drive-through example for this also. Let's take it to the extreme. You're driving around, you see the menu there, you already know what you want because it's McDonald's. You already know what they have. It's not a brain buster. I mean, you've got a good idea as to what they've had, what they have because they've always had it. So, with all of that aside, instead of a human being asking you what you want, it's a robot. And then you say, well, I just want this. And then the robot says, okay, here's your total. Thank you. Pull around. And then you do. But instead of interacting with a human being, you actually interact with a physical, Tesla robot or an Elon Musk built robot. I don't know about you, but that's really off-putting. I mean, first of all, the first time it happens, it would scare the shit out of me. The second time it happens, which there wouldn't be a second time after that. After the first time, that would be the end of it. I would just say, well, I'm not going to hand my money over to this robot because this is really disconcerting and I don't like any of this. And I would prefer the morbidly obese, male or female who clearly looks like they eat their way through McDonald's on a day in and day out basis and have them take my money as opposed to a robot. I mean, me personally, I would rather have that be the case. But again, the robot thing is off-putting to people. Let me give you another example. And again, it doesn't even have to be a physical robot. What if it was just like an ATM system? And they already have this at McDonald's, by the way, in certain McDonald's across the world anyway, where again, you hit a touch screen and then you swipe your card and then it spits out your cheeseburger through a machine. That's rather off-putting. See, the human element is God's element. This is Jesus's element. That's exactly why we need human connection. Only the godless would want more robotic connection or humans connecting with robots so that robots can connect with robots. Take his Tesla automobiles, for example, and all of this driverless, wireless, riding around in a car while it cooks your genitals as you're sitting on these electric chairs all of the time for hours on end. And then you wonder why you have neuropathy. I mean, the vast majority of people have already made up their minds when it comes to electric stuff and electric vehicles and driverless automobiles and whatever else. And they've overwhelmingly answered no, they don't want it. Because if people wanted it, ladies and gentlemen, you'd see Teslas everywhere. They're $35,000. Again, you can buy a Tesla or you can buy a 1980 C10 Chevy pickup truck. Which one would you rather have? I know which one I would rather have. You can buy a restored classic automobile for almost less than that, if not the same amount of money, at a Mecum Auto auction or a Barrett-Jackson auction. Depends on when you get at the auction, but either way, these automobiles exist that are gas-powered, that aren't filled with electricity that'll cook you to death. And if people have that choice, overwhelmingly, and it's already the case, overwhelmingly people are not buying Teslas. They're not buying electric vehicles. The jury's in on it. So these autistic guys can talk about all this technology all they want. The American people and the world population has already made up their mind. Let me go back again to an example I've brought up numerous times before. Again, it parallels this exact point. It has to do with virtual headsets and virtual reality headsets. Everybody remembers where they were usually when virtual reality first came out. I believe it was in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And occasionally, a unit would show up in an arcade. In particular, if that video arcade was inside of a shopping mall. And you would pay a good amount of money to even try it. They had a giant stage. I remember it when I was a kid. They had a giant stage. You'd pay like $10, and then you'd stand on this stage, and then you would put on this headset, and you were looking around this very sort of archaic-looking, very sharp-lined virtual reality world as you're walking around with this headset on. So you're not seeing the real world around you. You're seeing, of course, this fake manufactured world. which was really poor graphics at the time. But again, it was the 90s. And then over time, they began to, again, advance themselves as a technology, certainly from a graphics standpoint. But the VR headsets, again, would come and go. They'd come and they'd go, they'd come and they'd go. And overwhelmingly, time and time and time again, the public would say, no, we don't want this. It looks stupid, it's expensive, it gives us headaches, and we prefer the real world. And then their conscience kicks in, which is Jesus. And then he ultimately says, there's so much of the world that I've created for you that you haven't actually seen, that instead of going to see it really with your own eyes, you would rather put on this fake headset and see something that's been manufactured by a human being to look like it's real when in fact it isn't. Americans have overwhelmingly said no to this. And we keep saying no, which is a great thing. So again, billions of robots in the future? Give me a break. It's not going to happen. Go to hell. Elon Musk can go straight to hell. It isn't going to happen. The American public wants nothing to do with it. The American public isn't being coerced into changing their fast food order. They're not being coerced into using a fast food payment application on their phone. They're not putting chips in their brain to pay for something to where they can scan their forehead across a barcode in a grocery store and pay for their celery. They're not doing that. They're not using the Amazon One system with the palm of their hand. It's not happening. People don't like this shit. They don't like it. They don't like staring into screens and having it read their face and read their eyes. They're not fans of this either. They don't like TSA. I mean, the very Americans, and this is the hypocritical part, which I'll get into more of that here in just a second, but that's also the hypocritical part, is that people complain about TSA and all the evasive technological tools that TSA has when you're trying to get on an airplane. But then those same people adopt these technology tools around them in their own personal lives, and they have no idea that they're essentially one and the same. That they're still being manipulated in order to, again, accept all of this sort of in piecemeal fashion, one domino at a time, and before you know it, you're surrounded by it and there's no escaping it. Again, overwhelmingly, Americans don't want this. And it's going to be real hard for politicians in the future to want to accept this because, again, robots don't vote, unless, of course, you're using a Dominion voting machine, in which case, yes, they do. But it's the human element that people still enjoy. They still enjoy the back and forth, which they should, and we always should. And of course, some people are just terrible, and we know that. And that doesn't make the situation any more enjoyable, of course, when you encounter a terrible human being who's doing a particular service that might not be that hard. But either way, again, replacing them with robots is not the solution. And you can hear the concern in Ted Cruz's voice. I mean, he's like, okay, now, what does this mean for human workers in the future? And he's like, well, we don't need them in the future. We're not going to need them because everything is going to be free. Elon Musk is completely autistic. He has no control, really. Again, if he wants to go on a podcast and run his mouth and say some off-the-wall shit, okay, fine. It's America, he gets to do that. But we don't have to buy it. And we don't have to believe it either. So again, that particular clip is a clip that and this is the hypocritical part, which again I'm going to get back to now, but that right there is a clip from that interview that the Elon fanboys aren't going to play. Because even what he's saying in that clip doesn't make a lick of sense, even for most of the Elon fanboys and all the meme makers of Elon and whatever else, superimposing his face on images and saying he's the cat's pajamas. He's just one of the retards on the playground. That's all. He's got a lot of money, good for him. Don't really care. He got it from his dad, from running diamond mines in Africa. Again, good for him. That's fine. But he doesn't get to tell us how to live. And frankly, people aren't buying. They're just not buying. His car company should prove it. And it's not even his. So, there's that. Now again, when it comes to the black pillars, there's also this, and I have to mention this too because this is interesting. All the ones that are screaming Jew at the top of their lungs, like Stu Peters won't bring this up. Because again, he's too busy criticizing Donald Trump as being Zion Don. He's not taking in evidence. He's not looking at everything from multiple different angles. And then they're willfully and very purposefully not connecting dots and again, not taking in evidence. It's kind of a problem because you can't make an objective conclusion if you're not taking in as much evidence as humanly possible. This is from the Gateway Pundit, believe it or not, and it was titled just the other day on March 15th, Trump revokes security clearance for Paul Weiss law firm. Donald Trump just removed the security clearance that was in place at the time for an entire Jewish law firm. Well, what happened to all the Zion Don stuff? He's a Zionist, it's Israel first, it's Jew first, it's this, that, and the other. If that were true, why would he remove the entire security clearance of a law firm, not to mention, why would a law firm have security clearance in the first place? It says President Donald Trump has once again taken decisive action against the entrenched forces of corruption, Jewish lobby, that have weaponized America's legal system against conservatives. Yeah, communist Jews. It says Trump signed an executive order that officially cuts off the notorious global law firm Paul Weiss Rifkind, Wharton and Garrison LLP from federal contracts and security clearances. It says the order cites the firm's deep ties to politically motivated prosecution's radical left-wing discrimination policies and its attempts to undermine American democracy. It's a republic, but whatever. It says Paul Weiss isn't some random target. It's a poster child for everything conservatives despise about the legal swamp. It says the firm's rap sheet, as laid out in the order, reads like a laundry list of anti-American offenses. Yeah, because they're Zionists. It says back in 2021, a Paul Weiss partner, fresh off Robert Mueller's partisan witch hunt, spearheaded a pro bono lawsuit against patriots tied to the January 6th Capitol event. Then there's Hillary Clinton's lawyer, Mark Pomerantz, also Jewish. The unethical attorney Paul Weiss welcomed with open arms in 2022. Pomerantz, who briefly ditched the firm to join Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's office, was obsessed with manufacturing a case against Trump, only to return after failing to convince even Alvin Bragg to move forward with their sham charges. And it goes on and on and on. The point here again is that that's an interesting move. And if he was really a Zionist, why would he remove this particular law firm? I understand that people would say, well, Sean, they specifically targeted him, so it's just personal. It's not that he's going after a Jewish law firm. It's just that he's going after a Jewish law firm that came after him. That's possible. But if these individuals, and we know this to be true, these communist law firms are engaging in treason and sedition to take down the United States to gain power for themselves. And we know who runs these law firms. Again, saying the term Jewish lawyer is redundant, is it not? Most of them are Jewish, as it turns out. Again, it's the inability to take in that kind of evidence and to have individuals, again, be so certain of themselves and then make comments thinking that they have it all figured out. As I've said a million times, I don't have it all figured out, but I take in copious amounts of evidence from lots of different angles. And when you do that, you can pick up on consistencies and certainly inconsistencies also. Let me give you another example. Jeremy Boring, the CEO of the Daily Wire, apparently is stepping down. Kind of a big deal. He's Jewish. Lots of people know that the Daily Wire is basically an Israeli spy operation by and large. Certainly Ben Shapiro is. They're all Zionists by and large. Again, I don't think it can get any more obvious. But again, there's a lot of talk in the Q drops about resignations and tracking the resignations and what that means. What that means for those individuals. Maybe somebody got to him. Maybe they want to replace him with somebody who's actually a bigger Zionist than Jeremy Boring. Who's to say? But again, A lot of these people are flipping out at Donald Trump also because they're saying he's not doing enough for the Jewish people, like Eric Weinstein. I just listened to he and Dave Rubin on X do a little back and forth for a couple of minutes, and Eric Weinstein's like, I don't know why Donald Trump isn't crushing all these anti-Jew haters, and they exist on the right and the left. They're all over the place, but Donald Trump's not doing enough. He needs to crush these people. And even Dave Rubin, who's Jewish, is like, I think he's doing okay. I think there's a lot of people that, like certain people, and there's a lot of people that don't like certain people. I mean, Dave Rubin's useless, but even so, I mean, they're both useless. But you're seeing, again, these communists really come out of the woodwork, and they want Donald Trump to basically crush anybody who criticizes anybody who happens to be Jewish. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That's the First Amendment. We have the First Amendment. And that gets to be used across the board no matter what. And again, if we stop using the First Amendment, we'll lose it. And that's not a good thing either. So let me mention this also, kind of, again, switching sort of to education, although you can see how this creeps into education. This was from Catherine Herridge, who, again, is a great investigative reporter. She's gone on her own way here, former Fox News and then CBS. Neither one of those stations liked her because, again, she was bringing them stories that they didn't want to report on. But again, she's, I think, been used by the good guys here for a very long time. Anyway, I recommend following her on X. But it says the following here. This is, let me give you a date on this. This is from March 16th. And she said, breaking, an internal FBI inclusivity guide, quote unquote, obtained by our own team, counseled agents on, quote, ways to manage your unconscious bias, micro inequities, and, quote, how to improve your inclusive intelligence. It says, quote, the new IQ, your guide to sustaining inclusive habits in the workplace, unquote, was shared in mid-2020 and includes 9 tips, quote unquote, to counter unconscious bias. Separately, as part of our investigation, recently retired FBI agents said they saw firsthand how law enforcement capabilities were compromised because merit took a back seat to DEI priorities. It says they dubbed the legendary FBI Quantico Training Academy the Participation Academy because of headquarters pressure to push through poorly performing candidates to meet DEI objectives. The retired agent said FBI Director Patel inherits a workforce where standards dropped, impacting physical fitness of agents, their firearm skills, as well as professional qualifications, putting the FBI mission and safety at risk. It says deep dive. More than a half dozen recently retired FBI agents agreed to speak with me on a confidential basis. They said they feared retaliation for describing their experiences with the FBI's DEI initiatives. While fiercely loyal to the Bureau, they said they felt compelled to come forward, citing a dangerous reduction in standards. It says the group of retired agents was diverse. It included male, female, Asian, black, and white agents from field offices in different parts of the country. Their work experience covered multiple facets of the recruitment and training process. Everyone we spoke with offered a first-hand account of DEI's impact. The retired agents told me they valued diversity because it could strengthen the FBI mission, but in recent years, FBI leadership took the attitude the Bureau was, quote, too white. We were told that the physical fitness performance of candidates declined. The requirements include timed sit-ups 1 minute, a 300-meter sprint, untimed push-ups maximum, and timed 1.5-mile run. The retired agents described recruits who had an attitude problem. The recruits would quit the long-distance run or claim injuries if they thought they would not pass a requirement. The number of successfully completed push-ups was routinely low because many recruits didn't have the skill or strength to follow the required protocol, i.e. bad form, not low enough. It says what we learned about firearms training was also concerning. We were told some recruits lacked the mental toughness to competently handle weapons. Other candidates had documented mental health issues. While their performance was poor, there was a, quote, push them through Quantico attitude, unquote. It says the backbone of the FBI investigations is a witness interview summary known as 302. In some cases, new agents lacked basic writing skills to complete a 302, in part because work experience requirements had been relaxed. Once poor-performing recruits were pushed through Quantico, the hope was the FBI field office would fix them. These retired FBI agents are solutions-oriented and respectfully asked if Director Patel would be willing to meet with them because they understand where the change needs to happen internally. It says, describing how, quote, woke broke the FBI, unquote, one of the agents shared the wrenching personal decision to discourage their child from following in their professional footsteps. In response to our questions, FBI spokesman Ben Williamson said, quote, Director Patel's new FBI will be an entirely mission-focused institution, working every day to get criminals off our streets, keep the American people safe, and let good agents be good agents. We are aggressively working to abide by any presidential directive to root out politically motivated social engineering projects. They have zero home here and never will as long as Director Patel is at the helm, unquote. See, this is communism, and this right here is exactly how you destroy a nation. You integrate socially engineered degenerate policy that makes zero sense, redefining words, redefining language, all of it, of course, also Marxist as well, and, of course, it's Khazarian mafia related as well. But you do all of that at the exact same time. From agency to agency, you make it ubiquitous across the board so that every agency is speaking the same deranged language. And then if you're not speaking it, well, then you don't have a chance at working for any agency or even making a living. And of course, as we know, this has made its way throughout the entire education system as well, which is not education, it's a brainwashing, torturing system. And that's exactly, again, what's brought up here in this particular article from the Washington Examiner, where it was titled, Trump is right, the Department of Education must go. Again, at the beginning of the article, they, of course, talk about wasteful spending and poor test scores and blah, blah, blah. But then it starts to get into some of the juice here, which I've brought up on the show from the very start of this show. It says the following, quote, the public school lockdowns during COVID-19 were a disaster for children. Millions of them went missing from the system. Millions. It says millions more had their education set back in ways we won't be able to fully understand or calculate for years. The only silver lining from that disastrous experiment is that parents took a hard look at their children and what their children were being taught. From explicit books in the student libraries and radical leftist propaganda in textbooks, a lot of parents didn't like what they saw. As you've heard me say before, this is where the devil overplays his hand. You had no idea that this was on the other end of it. That when you lock down students and you kick them out of schools and then you drive around in your automobiles holding signs say, stick with it, we're with you, don't worry, one day we'll get back together once COVID is at bay, that all of that was super cringe and super gay and people weren't buying it. And as I've said before, and I certainly said it for Monday's episode, that right there is the colossal mistake that school districts are failing to recognize and admit that they made. That the entire COVID lie was just that. It was a lie. And every policy that came after it was not only purposeful, but it too was a lie also. And it didn't work. Because look at what's happening with all of the schools now. They're collapsing. They're selling a product and people aren't buying anymore, if they ever were. It goes on here. It says it became crystal clear that Washington bureaucrats have failed our families and have put their radical ideology over the actual educational needs of our children. Since then, we've seen a revolution of parents standing up and speaking out to retake their schools. That needs to continue. Well, they'll never be able to retake the schools because they're digging in as the enemy and they are against clear-thinking parents. Only the brainwashed continue to send their children to these environments. But the parents are waking up to the bigger picture, which is they can walk away from these environments permanently. and never have to play their games again regarding their children. This is the biggest obstacle in the army of entrenched swamp bureaucrats who control the federal money, who control where the federal money flows, it says. It says, while a relatively small percentage of education dollars come from Washington, it's not really, it's a bunch, an overwhelming number of strings are attached to every penny. As the old saying goes, he who pays the piper picks the tune. And we have seen exactly what kind of music Washington wants to play. It's time to cut the strings and put parents back in control. Well, parents have always been in control. They just didn't know it. It says, thanks to the work of independent citizen journalists such as Libs of TikTok's Chaya Rachik. Yes, I'm sure she had a huge role in it, although she did have a bit of a role because all she was doing, of course, was sort of engaging in gluttonous low-hanging fruit. Degenerate this, degenerate that, look how degenerate they are, pervert books, pervert this, pervert that. And that's great. But it's child trafficking. It's social engineering. And yes, while a great deal of it, of course, comes from the left, it also comes from the political right also. Certainly to a local extent when it comes to school boards. Again, a lot of people on the so-called right who were conservative school board members weren't speaking out against any of that either. That should concern individuals too. But again, I'll give credit where credit's due. There's no doubt that Libs of TikTok played a huge role in moving this ball. Again, millions of followers, lots of accounts, plenty of ghostwriters working on her behalf. Of that, I have no doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. But what you can't do is you can't defend these systems either. You can't say that you can reform these systems because you certainly can't. It says people have been treated to a full view of the insanity that radical progressive activists, Jewish lobby, in the public school system have been forcing on our children. It says it now seems clear that gender theory, racial ideologies, and anti-American interpretations of history have become more important than reading, writing, and math to many teachers and administrators. Parents who dared oppose such policies, such as Scott Smith in Virginia and Shannon Addock in Illinois, were considered racist, white supremacists, and even domestic terrorists by their own local school boards and governments. We must return to a time when the government recognizes that parents, on the whole, know their children better than even the most skilled and well-meaning teachers ever could. Yeah, that right there again is kryptonite to those people. It's kryptonite to government. They hate that. They hate that line. Parents know more about educating. Well, they're not certified. They're not. Parents aren't licensed teachers. How could they possibly know? It says that's not a criticism. It's just a natural reality. And that reality informs the duty that parents have in raising their children and the rights they have in determining how those children will be educated. This used to be common sense. Unfortunately, they said, it just isn't that common anymore. It says the top-down approach to education policy fails the common sense test. With nearly 100,000 public schools serving almost 50 million students, no federal bureaucracy could or should attempt to oversee a system that large. In fact, when Congress established the Education Department, it was not meant to. It was intended to serve as a clearinghouse of ideas, helping schools learn from each other, not to control them. Well, not exactly. The Education Department, at its inception, of course, was a book depository. It was supposed to be, again, a way to share books that existed from American authors back and forth from school to school, and then, of course, from home to home, because a lot of home learning was taking place back in the, 1867, at the exact same time when it became a federal department in the sense of Jimmy Carter. That's when it turned into a sexual degeneracy, money laundering operation that traffics children. It goes on. It says 4 decades later, the department has ballooned into a massive bureaucracy around 4,000 federal employees dictating how schools must operate. This approach is entirely inconsistent with the founders' intent to create a constitutional system that reserved rights to the individual and their belief that governmental power should be exercised at the most local level practicable. It says, if you want to see America's education system return to the fundamentals that will prepare students for the demands of the modern economy and the responsibilities of U.S. citizenship, we need to ensure local school board members are directly accountable to parents for results without Washington's interference. Good luck. It's not going to happen. School board members have lost their minds. Even the conservative ones that get on boards in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, they still make poor affiliations and associations, like associating with education associations, school board associations, superintendent associations, etc., etc. They still make those bad associations, and that's a bad idea. It wraps up here. It says, re-empowering parents will be a good investment in our future and a necessary step to truly make America great again. President Donald Trump and Education Secretary Linda McMahon are absolutely right to dismantle the education department as we know it, and every parent, student, and teacher in this country should welcome it, unquote. And they won't. Because parents really, a lot of them anyway, don't want the responsibility of teaching their own children. And they don't want their own children to learn on their own because, again, they believe that government is the best parent. They believe that certified teachers make the best educators. It just couldn't be further from the truth. These institutions have lost their minds because the people who work within believe things that are not real. And then we're back to cognitive dissonance. And then we're back, of course, for the entire need of gradual disillusionment or cognitive scaffolding, and these individuals don't want to engage in it. The people who work in these school buildings do not want to even come to grips with the fact that they have been under the guise of an illusion, and that all of the material that they teach in school is illusionary, and that the way that they run these buildings is not the way that they need to be run. They don't want to come to grips with that. They think that, again, prom dances, homecoming football games, and God knows what else are the cat's pajamas, and that always has to exist. It's a huge problem. But again, you're not going to be able to fix it. And on that note, let me mention this just very quickly. Because again, there's been some of this already, albeit few and far reported, I should say. But it was a prediction I made a while back that I kind of want to reiterate just very quickly, because I think that there's something that hasn't happened that could happen that could be very troubling, and that's putting it mildly. And it has to do with illegal aliens that exist within these American schools that have been, of course, allowed to exist within these American schools, and there are some states that are pushing forth with trying to get rid of illegal aliens in schools, even though to some extent it's Supreme Court precedent. But even so, it would be interesting to see from a legal standpoint if some of these states, again, can push forth legislation that becomes law that goes against that. But either way, the prediction is that illegal aliens who are teenagers within these schools would basically engage in high levels of illegality, if not murder, against school boards or school districts or school employees or school students, in an effort, again, to sort of fight back from being detained, or they would be given orders from individuals, whether it be their own illegal traffickers or anybody else, to carry out an attack inside of a school in America. Again, to some extent, some would say that this has already happened, whether it be a knife attack over here or, a violent physical attack somewhere else. But something that's more coordinated on a larger scale. I'm not ruling out the possibility. So it's possible that something like that could certainly happen. But as we know, the very threat of being detained by ICE has a lot of these school districts telling all of their students and their employees that, they have to abide by certain search warrants, of course. But at the same time, they want everybody to be safe and they want everybody to be protected, and we're here for you, and all of that other nonsense. So I don't know what's going to happen as this continues to roll out here regarding ICE enforcement, but the illegals need to get gone. And again, if deterrence is one of the methods that's being used and these individuals are self-deporting, then so be it. But as long as again, Americans who are legal are inside of these buildings and they're around illegals, I think it's safe to say that those illegals could certainly be considered unpredictable. I'll put it that way. And again, the environments aren't safe to begin with. But if you have individuals, again, who are illegal, who are willing to engage in particular behaviors in an attempt to stay in America, even if those are illegal behaviors, well, then no one's really safe. And again, let's face it, they're just not safe environments for all the reasons that have been brought up here and that you're well aware of. The home learning family doesn't have to deal with this nor worry about it, which is a good thing, clearly. So there's that. Just wanted to sort of reiterate that and say that that is a possible scenario, that is something that could happen. I'll end with this. This is kind of interesting, again, from the jab perspective. This is not shocking. This is actually something that I've visited on the show here before. But I do want to make mention of this. It had to do, of course, with the jabbed and some of the jabbed being classified as genetically modified organisms. Here's essentially a summary from Dr. Makis, and also this was on the expose as well. But it says the following here: Dr. Peter Kotlar, a Slovak physician, government commissioner, and MP, drops bombshell investigation into DNA contamination. The vaccinated are now officially GMO. He said, quote, "I am not afraid to say officially a genetically modified organism. Robert Kennedy Jr., Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel has also been informed. My primary task is to uphold the Constitution, and as a doctor, I have the duty and the right to protect the health of Slovak citizens. Yesterday, I also informed the U.S. Minister of Health and Human Services a letter, Mr. Robert Kennedy Jr., who confirmed receipt. Furthermore, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Kash Patel, and Pamela Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, were also informed. 34 batches from Pfizer and Moderna have been analyzed so far, which were stored according to the proper cold chain, and only those that were used for the Slovak population during the COVID-19 epidemic, rather. He said, today I will present the most significant results of the analysis. Says the results of the analysis of all, I repeat, all analyzed batches proved that in every single vial, there is an extremely high amount of DNA, a vector that encodes the cassette for the synthesis of the S protein, if not other proteins as well. It says almost the same amount as mRNA, DNA is also present there. In 3 cases, the DNA content is even higher than the mRNA. And then the person went on and they said, this can no longer be considered an mRNA vaccine. This genetic code for the synthesis of the spike protein, this information stored in the DNA, is stable compared to mRNA, can integrate into human nuclear DNA, and subsequently, such a human organism becomes, I'm not afraid to say officially, a genetically modified organism, unquote. Now, of course, what we know, and it's not new, but there was this study, and this is the study I believe that the Slovak individual was referencing, and it's titled Quantitative Multiplex Real-Time PCR Analysis of Moderna Spikevax and Pfizer BNT162b2 vaccines. Essentially, what they arrive at is that it's not quote-unquote contamination, it's intentional. And we know that. Again, for the normies out there who are unaware, it was a depopulation shot, and it is a depopulation shot. Again, it's not some slip-up. It's not an oopsie. It's not whoops. Some rabbit fell into a vat of all of this being made in some factory, and it's now become contaminated by accident. This was intentional, 100%. There is no denying that. But again, there are unfortunately people who continue to engage in cognitive dissonance and actually believe that long COVID is still a thing, when in fact we knew from the start that was just a made-up term to cover for the vaccine injured and the bioweapon injured, because it's not a vaccine. And they don't even know that those papers are out there openly saying that there is no such thing as long COVID. There is just VAIDS. Again, this proof is out there, but the people, again, who are jabbed, a great deal of them are refusing to take any of this into consideration, let alone look at it, let alone think about it. And that right there is the illusion part. But the more information that comes out here, again, it is gradual disillusionment because it has to be gradual. People will not listen to the person on the mountaintop screaming the truth. They either have to physically experience it themselves, which by, of course, that point, it's too late, or they just have to see it slowly drip out in front of them on even the mediums that they pay attention to where they receive information. And then ultimately, there's no escaping it because the vast majority of individuals know exactly what's going on. Again, if they're going to ignore facts and they're going to ignore evidence, then they're not going to be taking in all of the information that is available, which means the decisions that they are going to be making are not going to be sound, objective, scientifically concluded decisions. And that's going to be a huge problem. And that's, again, regarding anybody, any human being, regardless of what they do, where they are, how many people listen to them, how many people watch them or view them. If you're not taking in evidence, it's game over. You just become one-dimensional. And that's, again, not going to work out for not only that individual, but the people who listen to that individual. So I'm trying to not be one-dimensional here. Again, I cover lots of different things on the show, lots of different evidence, and I just want people to arrive at their own conclusions. You don't even have to listen to this. Just take in as much information as humanly possible. Sift through it, throw out the nonsense. Again, you have to arrive at a conclusion, a scientifically sound conclusion that it is nonsense, but then at the exact same time, you can't make that determination if you've never even looked at it and spent time with it and connected dots with it. So, again, that's up to every individual, without a doubt. But there's a lot of moving parts here still, and all of this, again, gradual disillusionment and cognitive scaffolding is happening. And it's happening on purpose because, again, not only is it the Great Awakening, and as we know, God wins in the end, but at the exact same time, this is a military operation too. This is happening on purpose. You can't open up the front page of a newspaper for people who still read it these days, and it says, COVID was a lie, if you took the shots, you're screwed, and 1,000 other things. You can't hit people over the head with that. They won't be able to swallow it. It has to be gradual. And again, unfortunately, for the people who aren't picking up on even that point, it might be too late. But that's not for me to decide. So, yeah. Sorry to end on a sour note, but yeah, this is it. I mean, this is gradual disillusionment. This is the point. It's red pilling. And it's not easy and it's not comfortable, but it's necessary. And it has to happen, certainly for the advancement of the human race and to keep us around, because that's the goal too. Okay, thank you for listening as always, ladies and gentlemen. I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.